This podcast is brought to you by Kiwi Design, the leader in metaquest and VR accessories. And now you can deck out your device while supporting the podcast. The metaquest 2 is a great headset, but do you ever feel things could be a bit more comfortable? Well, we have the solution for you. With lens protectors, controller grips, face covers, head straps, link cables, headset stands, and more, including my two personal favorites, the top version controller grips with added weight and an extended handle, and the Kiwi upgraded Elite strap. Let's be real, we've all whacked our controller. Don't be the guy messaging Oculus support for your own mistake or waiting weeks for an out-of-stock controller. Visit the link in our show notes to prepare yourself today. After visiting the link in our show notes, make sure to use the promo code Ruff Talk VR at checkout, all one word, to take full advantage of your savings. And make sure to click the link in our show notes so the podcast gets credit and you help support us. Remember, whatever you need, Kiwi has you covered. Hey everyone, welcome to this episode of Ruff Talk VR. Today we're talking with a developer that we've talked with before. We actually reviewed their game. We loved it. It's a card game on the MetaQuest App Lab store. It's free. Talking about Cards and Tankards, and today we're talking for the second time with Avid, who's one of the developers for the game. So Avid, before I go too crazy hyping up your game, do you want to tell our listeners a little bit about it in case they've never listened to either of those episodes or checked out this free badass card game?
Yeah, of course. So hi, everybody. In case you didn't meet me in the previous podcast, my name is Avid. I'm one of the game designers for Divergent Realities, the studio that's bringing you guys Cards and Tankards. It is the first and best, in my opinion, humbly, virtual reality social collectible card game that you can find on the market, which you can download today for free on either App Lab or Steam VR. If you're familiar with the genre of card games, it's very similar, has a lot of vibes to like Hearthstone, Yu-Gi-Oh!, Magic the Gathering. If you like any of those games, you'll love Cards and Tankards. We take our unique spin on some of the mechanics from all of them, and we've created something completely unique here that we have fallen in love with and hope to expound upon for many, many years. So join today, download the game, join into our taverns, and you can play with some of the other players that are enjoying the game today, and hopefully you guys can get spun up before our update launches on the 16th of August.
Ooh, that's coming quick, so I'm excited for it. And in case like I said, somebody hasn't played the game or listened to our previous episode, factions are a big part of this game. And I don't want to go too in depth, describing each faction, because we ran into this when we reviewed the game. It can be a little complex to explain without having the visual side, which for anybody watching on YouTube, we're lucky enough to have Avid inside his actual tavern with his character. It's pretty freaking cool. But for the audio listener stuff, it's a little hard to describe each individual faction and card element and gameplay just by audio. But last time you were on, you did kind of hype up that there was a fourth faction coming. You described it as kind of an Illuminati secret society.
Yeah.
So do you want to touch a little bit on that again, and also maybe talk about if there's been any other, things that have come out about it since?
Yeah. So I guess what we'll do is we'll try to get into as much as we can about the faction, which, by the way, is called the Augur Order. And it's like a secret society in this fantasy realm that kind of controls all things from behind the scenes. I'll try to touch on a little bit of the other factions just for what's relevant of them, as far as you understanding the game, if this is your first time hearing about Cards and Tankards. But yeah, for the most part today, we'll talk about the Augur Order, which is the new faction coming out on the 16th. And it's going to bring with it 35 new cards to the game for you guys to explore and mess around with and have a ton of fun. So as I explained in the previous podcast with you guys, the factions are all led by a very powerful god from behind the scenes. Each one of them has their own motivations, their own reasons and methods for manipulating the faction that represents them to achieve their goals in this realm, right? None of them are from this planet or this realm. They have all come here from other places, which eventually throughout the lore, players may find more information about. But what they need to know is they're here, or they were here now, because this game is a representation of a historical event, right, in this fantasy realm where they play the game as a remembrance of the war that happened, thousands of years ago. So all the characters that you meet and all the cards, they're actual characters and from like legends and myths, powerful creatures, powerful spells that were cast that, ended entire battles, for instance, right? And so as you see these new cards, think of them as like characters that build a larger story. But for this faction, their god is the god of perceptive god, not the god of perception, the perceptive god. And so his ability that he kind of brings to this faction is the ability to analyze everything that he sees in current events. Like he's analyzing the reality of time at present, and with all the facts that he's acquired, all the data that he's ingesting, he can predict very accurately what will come. It's almost like seeing the future, but it's not. It is just, he is so knowledgeable about understanding everything in as it's in motion that he can see the result before anyone else. And he shares that information with key individuals among the Augur Order, right? And with that knowledge, they can try to control the path forward for everyone in the realm, and to their benefit, obviously, and to whatever the god's objectives, which we'll keep secret at this time. But all these gods with their own unique powers, right? We had Dungeon Masters, the god of knowledge, and so a lot of the spells that they have are like dark matter magic, very powerful spells that you shouldn't know because it really is just going to drive you mad, but some people pursue it because they've got the god whispering in their ear, little secret nothings. You've got the MRA faction, which is the wild god who helps these trapped, enslaved creatures that the dungeon masters are using to protect their dungeons, right? Break free from their chains and become wild again. But like, it's not just for their benefit. They're actually also destroying the countryside, running through villages and causing problems in that sense as well. And then you've got the Plundering Guild, which is the god of greed, who uses the greed within mankind and others to kind of push them forward into, stealing and acquiring all these powerful artifacts and gold to accumulate wealth to pay for whatever they need basically to acquire their goals. But he specifically uses greed to manipulate. So, and then back to this fourth faction that's coming, right? The perceptive god, the foresight, is kind of what you're going to see with this faction. Is there's going to be some things. One of the spoilers we haven't actually gotten to yet, so you'll have to stand by. And we're actually not going to do it in this podcast, though. We'll kind of break down how that really happens with this kind of faction. So it's something that we're really excited to get to you guys, but not quite yet. So something unique about this faction, I guess I'm just going to keep rambling. The faction mechanic, right? Each faction has had their own mechanic. We're not going to break down all the three other factions in this podcast today, but for the Augur Order, they have a new card that's entering the game that you guys are going to become familiar with that are called contracts. They're contract spells. So they play like a spell from your hand, but they're specifically labeled as a contract spell. And how they resolve is very different. Right now, a spell is played, it instantly resolves whatever the effect is, and it's done, right? A contract, if you are familiar with like Yu-Gi-Oh, it may kind of function in a way that you're more familiar with, like a trap card. Okay, so you're going to play the spell, and then the spell is going to be inactive until a condition is met. Once that condition is met, it becomes active, and its ability then is triggered, and it will continue to remain active until the condition is no longer met, and then the card is discarded. Some contracts will discard immediately after becoming active if they specify, but most will discard once the condition is no longer met. And we'll go through some of the contracts that have already been spoiled, and we can talk about that a little more to kind of break that down to make sense for you. But for the faction, there are a couple benefits, right? Every faction in the game that we have right now, there is a reason why it benefits you as the player to play it as your primary faction rather than your secondary. You get added benefits that really kind of drive home the faction mechanics to a higher level that make it more efficient for you. You can still use those cards as a secondary faction in another deck, but they're not going to be as potent, right? So for this faction, we had to figure out a way to make contracts uniquely beneficial to you using Augur Order as the primary faction. And we did that in a couple of ways. One, if it's your primary faction, you will be able to have up to 4 contracts in play at a time. So with all the contracts that exist in this update, you can have 4 on the side, active, inactive state, constantly with their abilities triggering. You cannot play, regardless of if it's your primary or secondary, you can't play 2 of the same contract at once, and we'll get into that again later maybe. But if it is your secondary faction only, if you're just using it in like a DM deck or an MRA deck, you will only be able to have 1 contract in play at any given time. So it limits the total number of contracts you can use during your match, which if it's your secondary faction and you're limited to those 10 cards, you're probably not going to have a whole lot of contracts anyways. that you're not going to be getting up to that number of 4. So again, we were like, okay, well, we need to still make it beneficial for you to run it as your primary versus secondary. And this is where we got excited, and we did take a little bit of inspiration from, again, Yu-Gi-Oh! With trap cards. You don't know what your opponent's trap card is until it's revealed. So with contracts, the way we're going to do it is if it's your primary faction, the card is hidden when it's in its inactive state to all other players. So they will not be able to know what it is. Once it is active, it'll become revealed for everyone and they'll be able to see it, but they won't be able to see it coming. Only you will, because you have the perceptive god who knows the future. If you play it as your secondary faction, even in its inactive state, you can still examine it and see what it is. So your opponent will see it coming, but the contract is still something that they can't avoid, right? It's going to have its condition eventually met. You can just now play around it a little bit, but it's still going to be powerful cards in the secondary faction. The last benefit is that if you are running Augur Order as your primary faction, all contracts cost 1 less mana for you. So they will play on a lower mana curve, which is very strong. However, so what we've done with the contract spells as well to kind of keep them hidden, right? We want to have that kind of sense of you don't know what the contract's going to be, is the contract spells are all the same exact mana costs. So that way you can't predict what it is based on what your opponent played mana wise when they played the contract. So all manas or all contracts are going to be 3 mana across the board, which means all abilities have to be tailored down to that 3 mana range. Some are still very strong, but like if the condition is met, it may be more difficult though to get those powerful abilities because the condition will be harder to keep up, for instance. But if you do, you can have that powerful ability continuing to go on as long as the contract is met, and you can dominate your opponent in that way, or you can catch them off guard and surprise them. And with it being only 2 mana for you to play those contracts, since it's your primary faction, you'll have a significant advantage using contracts over your opponent. So it drives a lot of people to use Augur Order as the primary if they're going to be focusing around the contract aspect of this faction. And I guess before I break into anything else, since I've just brought that up to you guys and you may not have known all of that, what kind of thoughts are running through your mind that you would want me to answer or touch on?
Well, first I'm going to say I already know now. I'm going to, it's kind of one of those, you get kind of happy with the decks you get. You put together yourself, you do a little experimentation, and now there's a new whole faction that's it sounds like a real game changer faction too.
Yeah, we were talking about this a little bit off air, just how much one card can change your whole play style, because
I got some tanks in mine.
Yeah,
just
and
vicious.
Each card costs a different amount of mana, is a different type, so you can look at that breakdown in your deck list, and it's like there might be a certain ratio. That's how I am. I like to keep kind of certain ratios, not too many, 1 manas, but also not too many, seven manas or anything. I like a good balance. So even just getting 1 new card in your deck, that can change a lot. It's not as simple as just add this card and then you're good to go. You're going to take this, you're going to move this. So 30 new cards, a new faction. Oh
35,
man, I
35.
have 35. I have some experimenting to do. I guess the biggest thing I need to play with is, am I going to keep Plundering Guild as my main?
God no.
Or am I going to go Augur Order main and make Plundering Guild my secondary?
Yeah.
So here's what's interesting too for you to think about with that is Augur Order is going to be a spell heavy faction. So all the other factions thus far have either broken even or been creature heavy. This is going to be the first faction we release that is a spell heavy faction. It has way more not way more, but it has enough more spells than it does creatures. So it's not a balanced faction in that sense. The focus of a lot of the spells too are going to be, if you're familiar with the different archetypes, again, very control oriented. It'll have powerful removal spells, counter spells for your opponent's actions and such, right? Because we've got contracts that function kind of similar to trap cards, or at least like in a way like that. So you're talking about like whether you have to drop Plundering Guild, it may actually be the perfect combination if you want to start learning how to run a control deck. You use all the removal that exists, like Fireball and Dead or Alive, right, from Plundering Guild or Wealth Pummel, and you combine that with all the removal that we're going to have in this faction as well. And your whole goal might just be to shut down your opponent's things that are going on, then try to, very, very late game drop something very powerful and strong to kind of end the battle, which when we cover some of the spoilers and stuff that have already been covered. I'm not sure if you guys have followed those in the Discord as they've been dropped or not, but when we cover them all again today, it'll really get you thinking about, oh, what might actually be coming? What might I do? It'll be fun to see your guys' reactions to those.
Yeah, we got some competitive matches and experimenting to do. What I can already tell is, like, you guys put a lot of effort into balancing this faction. It's I keep referencing one card can change a lot, and that's the case even when for you guys when you add them to the game. I can imagine there's a lot of balancing that goes on, and that's something that impressed me with the game when we reviewed it is, there's a lot of different play styles. Look, I get murked by people who are spell heavy currently. I still remember one duel, or yeah, I guess we can call him duel. There was a guy who I was kicking his ass, and then he ended up murking me with spells. And it's like, man, the game's balanced. There's not one OP playstyle, because I might still be able to beat that guy with my current playstyle as is too. So I mean, how long did it take to add a new faction like this, and make sure it's balanced well and everything like that?
So right now I'm as the game designer, right? This has been one of my biggest focus. This and trying to prep us for exit of early access, but designing the faction, we've had it on paper for months. Then we started looking at what are going to be the actual like engineering complexities behind some of the mechanics that we've theorized and come up with in our minds, but maybe actually very complicated or engine breaking once introduced to the game. There's certain cards that just are very complicated, right? Like in the Dungeon Master faction, the Augur card where it banishes a spell and then plays it back. That was a cool ability and concept, but when it was first introduced, and even now sometimes new cards that are introduced with it, it has just like a crazy amount of bugs, that very specific card that requires a lot of hard-coded solutions. And now that it's in the game, we're forced to fix it. So when designing a new faction, we really try to kind of manage the idea and the dream of what we would love to happen with the reality of some of our engine limitations, the other interactions with certain cards and stuff. And so that's been an ongoing process. That list that we originally had put together months and months ago has seen changes mostly across the board, for whether it's just rebalancing strength and stuff to make sure everything plays together well, or complete overhauls of abilities that wouldn't have worked or that we really wanted to bring in, because now that we're seeing because we're constantly monitoring how players are playing the cards that currently exist in the game. And so if I see certain decks that are just kind of taking on too much of the limelight because they don't have enough competition when we're looking to add like a new faction, right? We're like, okay, well, what could we introduce that could give that a little more of a run for its money to help make sure that we don't have a specific faction or a specific deck that's just dominating the meta and that players have to play if they want to win. And so, yeah, we went through a lot of rebalancing like that with this faction. We're still doing it, honestly, to this day. Like with the release date being on the 16th, like we have still been working very, very hard to finish all of our like art animations and make sure our creature models look just right, but also the abilities. We have the beta testers testing and trying to break everything they can, and they're doing an amazing job. DDR Cat is leading the team with Amethyst to really just hone down and find any possible bug, and they found things that I couldn't have even imagined. I'm so glad that they have before we obviously go into full release, so that way when you guys experience it, all of that will be fixed or balanced in some way that you guys will have the better experience. But yeah, it is a very long, lengthy process that we're constantly trying to fine tune, and as we grow those different kinds of teams, the beta team especially, we could not do it without them and their efforts to make sure that everything comes out to the players and the public in the best possible way.
No, I'm definitely I'm loving the fact, and you said kind of exactly what I was thinking. It's almost like some people, and they have some decks that are just, I mean, they just have these cards that allow them to just keep getting cards and getting cards.
That's the biggest headache, is when you have 2 cards and somebody has like 10, and you're like, oh.
And they're just gonna tell you it's never gonna stop, type of thing, So it's like, even the people who've been playing for a while that have a good strategy, and now you're throwing another faction in the mix, you're gonna have to make adjustments. Mm-hmm. So it's keeping the gameplay, I think, fair to the new person, as well as keeping it exciting for the people who've already played it. So it's a great move. But damn, there's going to be so much to have to. I can already vision in my head. I'm like 35 cards. I'm like, that's 35 different cards.
That's 35 different matches.
And like, as a designer, but I love to play my own game, right? So I've been theorizing all the decks that I would run and how they would perform in the meta, how they will change the meta. Like, are they going to drive other cards out or in, whatever. And I've got all these deck lists in mind, and we're testing them out and stuff, and it is an absolute blast. And I know it's just my like thoughts of it, which I do have, an extensive knowledge of the card database as it exists and all the mechanics. But like I cannot wait for players to get their hands on this content, because they're just going to go crazy with it and show me something that I was not even expecting. It's going to blow my mind, and I'm going to love it. Like they've done that in the past, and it's like one of my most exciting things to experience right as the game goes on. Like and it's even something so obvious, right? Like copy mage. You guys have played with infinite copy mage before?
Yeah, it's the Magi.
Yeah. Or no, not the Magi, the copy mage, Jaeger the copy mage.
Yes, so Jaeger. Okay, I knew him by Jaeger.
He'll copy a card from your hand, right?
They even use him in the tutorial, but he's one of my favorite cards because you can just ruin your opponent's day with it.
So it can reduce the cost of the card that it copies. And initially, we just looked at, okay, if it's copying any card from the hand, is it going to be a problem? And it's going to definitely be high value if it keeps reducing down the card of like a 10 mana card. And then is obviously giving you a copy of, the reduced card minus, another reduced 2. But we didn't see initially the infinite, like the fact that you could copy another copy mage, reduce its cost until that copy mage was 0. And then you have just a 0 mana copy mage copying another 0 mana copy mage. And you had infinite copy mages because you could just play them over and over. As long as you had no other card in your hand for that target, like the copy mage to hit as a target, it guaranteed it copied your copy mage. So you could just fill your board up with an infinite copy mage. Everyone was like, oh, this is super broken. It's actually really hard to pull off. And I won't get to the spoiler of what it is, but there is a card in this Augur Order that's going to be a hard shutdown for that. But it's something that's so cool to see. I'm playing against a player and I, as a developer, and then they bust that out on me, and it's something I never thought about. And I was just like, this guy just blew my mind. Like, congratulations to you for pulling off that amazing combo. Like I said, I can't wait to see more of that with this faction. It's going to be incredible.
That's a pretty. I do see the lineup that you'd have to have in play though to actually be able to pull that off. So it's definitely not something you can go in with the mindset of it's going to guarantee to work. I was going to
say you don't get to pick which starting cards you have either in that initial hand. So you can't guarantee.
Since seeing it, I've built a deck that's entire purpose for winning is getting out the infinite copy mage combo, and even with the deck's complete focus being to achieve that goal, it's only like 30% effective. And so it's not when it happens, it's very hard to lose. Once it happens, you pretty much win, but getting it to happen is not as often as you would think. So you actually lose a lot with the deck, which is where I felt like it wasn't something that we needed to directly address. It just happened to be that one of the cards that we were introducing in the update is going to actually technically be able to address. It just depends on if your opponent's running it while you're running copy mage. And who knows, there might be more cards that people find in this faction that'll actually make the infinite copy mage combo easier to play. We'll see.
All right, so I'll be honest with you. I'm the type of guy, if you put cake in front of my face every single day, I'm going to want cake. So we've talked about spoilers a couple times.
Yeah.
I love spoilers. They are what they are, Not spoilers in the terms of story-based games, but in terms of how we're doing it here with some features coming out. Those are the best type of spoilers, So do you want to talk a little bit about maybe what you've already announced in the Discord? You guys have a pretty pop-in Discord community, so if any of our listeners, you like Cards and Tankards and you're not in there, you can find some great matchups, find a great community of people.
Yeah, it's a really decent community.
Yeah, in-game community is great too, but you guys have a great Discord, so in case our listeners aren't in there seeing what's already released, do you want to touch a little bit about what you've already announced, and then maybe we can get into some new stuff?
Yeah, let's do that. So I've got all the recaps here visualized, so anyone watching the video will be able to see them as I talk about them, but we'll try to go in as much vocal detail as we can to give everybody who's just listening the best kind of idea. So one of the very first cards and this goes to kind of talking about how we're constantly changing, right? We announced one of the very first contract spells to kind of tease players on how this was going to work. And originally the card was called Fortified Siege. You can see it here on my screen on the bottom left corner. And we had the original art there as well. The condition was if you have 30 or more life, whenever you gain life, you deal 2 damage to a random enemy creature. So remembering that this is, a contract. So when you initially play it, it's face down, your opponent won't see it. Unless you're already at 30 health or more, then it's just going to instantly go active. So they would see it. But let's say you're already at 25 and you're running a heal deck. Well, you put that over, onto the side into the contract area. And then as you're playing the match and you're gaining health, once you hit 30, that thing goes active. And then you start chaining heal abilities to try to wipe your opponent's board as much as you can, right? Well, we originally teased this card and the players were not happy with necessarily the name or the art. And so we decided to do a community event where players could submit artwork and like name suggestions to see like if we would change it and what it would be. And so the card I've got over here on my left, Life Pact, is the new version of the card with the art that was produced by Moss Carell, our content creator lead. He and a bunch of others submitted a bunch of artwork, and this was the one that won by popularity, and we felt was going to work best with the game. And it's animated in the full release. This is what the normal version of it looks like. Same ability, just different name, different art. But that was the first one that we covered. And like I said, this just goes to show that things are always changing as we're going through polishing and finalizing this update. So some of these arts that you see, and maybe even some of the abilities may be tweaked before final release. But this is as they stand currently in the beta that we're happy with. The next one was one of our first creatures. It's a rare, very powerful card late game if you can get it rolling right off the bat. So it's a 3-mana creature. Name is Endless Merkband. It is a 1/1 creature to start. So it's only a 3-mana 1/1. People are gonna be like, oh, I don't want that. That's a horrible card stat-wise. Keep reading. So it is a rare. When you draw it, you add a copy of this card to your hand. So its current stats when you draw it is what you get a copy of, right? When you play it, entrance into the field, entrance ability is you give Endless Merkbands not in play +1/+1. So the one that's in your hand still, the copy, as well as any that are in your deck, in your reserves, in your graveyard, all of those are going to get +1/+1. So the more you play Endless Merkband, the stronger and stronger it's going to get over the course of the battle. And we've seen players in the beta testing who are focusing around this card get it up to a very high attack and health cost, and it's only a 3-mana card. So late game, it becomes very powerful. The downside is if you try to go into this, you're going to be spending a lot of mana for not a lot of value initially, and your opponent may take the early advantage to get to a point that you can't come back from with an ability like this. But if you can stall them enough and you can get it working, it's a great card to have.
I'm liking that card.
3 of those going in my deck, please.
Next one is a creature as well. This is a 4-mana, 3-attack, 3-health creature. It's an uncommon. Its name is Field Bureaucrat, and it makes it so your spells cost 1 less mana. So if you play multiple of these on your side of the field, right, and your opponent doesn't get rid of them, you could potentially have some low mana spells being completely free. Or, your final spell is only 7 mana. Or if you can figure out Copy Mages hitting this even more and you get a bunch of these on the field, right, then you could have all your spells be free. Like it's potentially, if you have 10 creatures that are all -1 mana, you have 10 mana spells for free as long as they remain on the board. And there's interesting things in this faction that we're not going to tease today again that may make that possible. So it'll just depend on how players want to build it. It's all of these things, and as I describe them, right, you're like, oh, that sounds completely overpowered. 10-mana spells for free all the time. Keeping a creature like this on the board, though, is very hard. Getting 10 of them on the board is almost impossible because you're probably going to be losing to whatever your opponent's doing at that point if your entire focus is getting these on the board. So it's very unlikely that it's going to happen, but we'll see what players can do. Again, I want to see them surprise me.
Oh no, those perfect storm matches will happen, even if it's that 1%. And when it does, it's going to be pretty friggin' epic.
It'll be glorious when it does. Yes. We've got another contract spell here. This is a rare one called Breach of Terms. The condition is an opponent attempts to play a spell from their hand, nullify that spell, then discard this contract. So it is a single use, basically cancel your opponent's spell. So again, this is a great one to emphasize the benefit of running Augur Order as your primary faction versus your secondary, because if it's your primary faction, this is not revealed until it becomes active. Your opponent's not going to know that it's about to negate their spell. They play it and their spell is just completely canceled out. If it's the secondary faction, though, this will be revealed to them, just not active. And so they can see it coming and they can just throw a trash spell into it to destroy it and then play the spell they actually want, right? So you have the advantage if you know the future versus you don't, which is a really cool and very powerful card. It's gonna have a lot of effect. Players are going to be very confident casting their fireballs to kill your creature, but nope, stopped. Breached of terms.
I think I'm loving this so far. I'm liking it a little too much, to be honest with you.
We've got another creature here we teased already, the Messenger Raven. It's a 3-mana 1/4 with flight and a new ability called Loophole. Loophole is an ability that if your attack or your opponent basically cannot block a creature with Loophole if it has higher attack power. So if they're both one attack, they can block each other. But if their creature has like all of their creatures across the board have 2 or more attack, then like this creature, which is a 1/4 flying creature, can get through without being blocked. Even if they have ranged, they wouldn't be able to block it because it's got Loophole. And that's a mechanic that you'll see on more cards as they get revealed or on the release day. It's an ability that we kind of play with. It doesn't seem crazy powerful because you're only getting creatures with very low attack through your opponent's lines, right? But there's a whole kind of mechanic that you can kind of do with that's going to be very interesting. And I can't remember if we actually spoiled it already as we go through these. We may... Nope, we haven't. It's not in my list, so I won't cover that today. Last word, though, for this creature. Once it dies, both players will draw a card. So it is beneficial once it dies regardless, because you'll be able to draw a card from it. Your opponent will as well, so it's not like you get the added benefit of it, but who knows? Maybe we'll see somebody use this in a creative way to create a mill deck where they force their opponent to draw through their deck very quickly, playing a bunch of these, and then they recycle their own deck with like Potion of the Wield, right? So they put all the graveyard back into the deck while their opponent doesn't have that, and then they end up running out and dying to the mana burn. It'll be interesting. We'll see.
I love these on-the-spot tactics you just throw out there that are so complex. It's like, come on, man.
Oh, but people they're planning it the second they hear this. The people who go deep in this game, the way you're going, I'm enjoying this too much. It's because your brains, you're almost like, flow charting it. You're like, oh, man, I can.
Well, you see the potential. Mm-hmm. Whether it's, Perfect Storm playing or not, even just having a couple of these cards would not be hurt.
And that's where the mill deck concept, right? That exists in other games. Like Hearthstone has one. I know Magic has them. Like decks specifically designed to have your opponent draw out of their cards so fast that they lose the game. With this, though, like we've designed different abilities that may make it possible down the road. But like as I've looked at all the cards that currently exist, I can't make an effective mill deck yet in my mind. But that's where I'm saying I'm so excited, because now that kind of leads into that genre. Who knows? A player may surprise the absolute crap out of me and make a deck that's very effective at it. And, that'll be really, really cool to see. The next card that we have here was the Dark Omen Spyhawk, another bird. Is a rare creature. It is a 2-mana flying creature with pacifist. So this creature can attack even if you give it a bunch of health. It won't really matter if you don't a bunch of attack power, but it won't really matter because it starts off with 0 attack power to begin with anyways. It's a 0/6 2-mana flying creature. Its benefit is it has an activate ability where you can draw a card and then discard a card to the bottom of your deck. And so this is, again, going to kind of lead into the perceptive god's power, right? The god of perception. Perceptive god. I keep saying it backwards. It is the perceptive god, right? So he has like a messenger raven, or not a messenger, the Dark Omen Spyhawk, right? That is collecting intelligence of its enemies by flying over and seeing different bits of information, like maybe troop formations, whatever, and then they can use that to basically predict future outcomes. And so this kind of Spyhawk is collecting intel, and in the form of, for the player, right, drawing a card and then recycling. You can put something you don't need right now away because you know what's coming next and you get it right away. So it's kind of like the future absorption of information. But this will be a very interesting card to see how players use it. The reason it has flying, obviously it's still a bird creature, but it's also able to still block even if it has pacifist. So it'll be able to block other flying creatures as well. So it's a great defensive card for you to use as you're trying to slow down your opponent getting into whatever your win condition is late game, which Augur Order, being more of a control faction, is not going to be a very fast faction. You are not trying to build a deck that's very aggro. This is very much going to be very slow rolling, control your opponent's win conditions, and then deliver something really heavy towards, the end of the match. And our last recap spoiler is Beneficial Agreement. This is a 1-mana spell. Give an enemy creature the text, when this attacks, your opponent gains 2 life. This is a really good card for like counter aggro, because if your opponent is summoning very fast attacking low mana creatures, they're likely not going to have an attack higher than. Are you looking over at Brian like that's his deck?
No, that's my deck.
Oh,
I'm the 10 2-mana creatures on the battlefield.
Yep, he's gonna probably put this in his deck for sure. Then, because
yeah,
if he tags one of your creatures with it, if you attack, he's just gonna gain as much life as you're dealing out or more, and so then you end up getting nullified. Basically, that creature is going to be taking up a slot on your board and not really helping you a lot if it doesn't have, you know, like an activate ability or something.
Yeah, before I just had to beat him before he drew the Magi that does, you know, what is it, 9 damage across the enemies on the battlefield.
Yeah.
If I could beat him before that, I'm good. If he drew that, he's gonna clear out my battlefield in one play.
Yeah, but to make it that far for me to use it is what the challenge had. You know, early on it seemed to work easier, but
yeah, no,
you got wise. And,
I'd fill up the battlefield.
Yeah, you just
all my cards are, you know, if you have this card, it plays another, or just it's just all based
just
around
steamroll me.
Yeah.
But I'm loving this. There's a lot of level changing or level balancing going on with this.
Well, it seems like you paid attention, like you already said it. I mean, you pay attention to how people play, but it seems like you really took that into consideration when making these new cards. Like, all right, what's the spammy tactics people are doing, and what's a card we can do to stop that?
So it's one of those things that was unfortunate, right? Like we can only put so much content out at once, and especially as we've been growing as a studio and as a game, you know, that amount has been changing. So early on, we started off with not even a complete faction. Then we got, you know, a faction and a half, 2 factions, 3 full factions. We've been slowly growing the amount that we can release. These kinds of plans for like how to balance the previous factions have already like always existed in our minds with the original game design. The downside was we just couldn't get them all in the game all at the same time, because otherwise you'd end up with a bunch of partial factions, and you wouldn't have enough to run any other deck but like what that, you know, the few cards in that faction allow you to do. So yeah, these cards have always been kind of necessary to finalize the balance of all the first 4 initial factions, right? That we have in the game. And so we're really happy to get it in, because I think players are going to find that this, like, they've already been enjoying the meta, but this is going to make the meta just like that much better, where everything is viable. You can run what you want. There's always a counter, but there's always like a way that if your opponent's not running your counter, like you might just slaughter them and win the battle with ease. You never know. Or maybe you're going to have a bunch of head-to-head matchups that are all super balanced, and it's just going to be who plays their deck better. And we're looking very forward to seeing that, especially once we start doing, we're going to let everybody have some time to acquire all the new cards, right? And then we're going to do our championship tournament, where it's going to be the cash prize, and we're going to see what decks people are going to bring to that tournament, because anything is going to be viable, and it'll be really interesting to see.
No, it's definitely going to be a learning. I mean, I'm sure some people it's going to be a real quick learning curve, but I know myself, I'm not going to be able to figure everything out in a week for sure.
I joked we have 35 matches to do against each other, because that's 35 new cards. We got some serious modifying to do.
But so that's where I would always suggest that you guys try to take it into the public taverns, because you're going to see what other people are theorizing and testing, right? And even if you lose to that deck, you're learning something, and then you can take it with you when you guys go back to your private tavern, so you can whoop each other's butts.
Oh yeah, we'll pop in there. What we seem to be the formula we seem to go is we do our experimentation against each other, find what works, and then test it in the public public tavern from there.
Nice. Yeah, highly recommend it.
No, I'm actually really trying to wrap my head around how even you can add one card into a new card into the game, mechanically has to somehow jive with any combination of cards somebody else has, let alone be able to add 35. And I mean, like, my brain really just can't. It's like, damn, that just sounds like so much like.
Yeah, for anybody who's played the game, that's a lot of content.
So I have like a whole Excel spreadsheet of all the cards, their abilities, the breakdowns of power and everything. So like each of the factions they're like statistically broken out as well. So we make sure that we have, you know, the proper distribution of whether it's, you know, rarities or mana curves or whatever. So we've got all of that. That's easy to balance. But then when it comes to like the mechanics and stuff, there are certain abilities now that as we're like releasing them that we have, I guess like I call them like developer warning notes is what I would, I guess, describe it as. So like Fireball, when it first entered the game, right, it was affected by mastery, which made it way too strong. So we've now taken into like the developer warning notes that any spell that does damage needs to be checked to see if mastery breaks the card, and if so, we have a specific now, you know, uniform way of wording them to make them not affected by mastery if necessary. So things like that exist for like making sure when we introduce something new that it's going to be balanced and not broken by something that we've already figured can break cards, that like something that already exists in the game, right? So like Alcar being able to fetch spells and banish them, has a lot of bugs potentially in the past, and so we make sure like new cards hopefully don't have that same kind of issue. Stuff like that. So yeah, we have like a list of things, or I do at least, that as we're designing and adding the new cards, we already have like a set bunch of rules to avoid, which makes it a lot easier. But yeah, even then, when I put the deck list down and we're starting to break through and theorize, okay, what ways can I combine this? And we think of it in the way of, how can I break it, right? Like, how can I make this card busted with the cards that exist in the game? And if I can't, then it's good. But again, you never know. Players may find something that we overlook, but that's the great part about it being digital as well, is we don't have to reprint. We just redesign and then we redistribute right in another update. But we do our absolute best right now, like I said, with the beta team, to test the absolute heck out of it, to make sure it's ready for you guys at launch. But go ahead, when you get your access to the cards, try to break them. I would love to see it. It'll be a fun little bit before we get it, patched and fixed.
Oh, it's gonna take me forever.
Oh no, I can't.
I can already. I'm excited.
I can't wait once it's public and you have it's one thing to have the beta testers, but once you get the whole community playing around, that's when you get the infinite magi combo. That's when that stuff starts to pop out, when it's really in the masses.
Well, that's where you keep talking. So you meant the copy mage, but you said magi, and like the magi has been one of the very popular cards for so long, right? And the broken god combos with that have continually existed, because it's a 10 mana creature that deals 9 damage randomly spread out among your enemy's board. So it can be devastating, especially if a lot of low health creatures. So people are like trying to spam that as much as possible, create copies of it, bring it back from the graveyard. But the god combos of bringing it out before turn 10 were what in our mind broke it. People being able to play that on a turn 4 was devastating. There was like no coming back from it. It wiped your whole board, and then they had this huge creature on the board that you had nothing to get rid of it. So like those are the kinds of things we did have to adjust with that card, and yeah, players found the god combo for it, broke it, and went crazy with it, and so we addressed it and fixed it, and we'll continue to do that with any cards. And so please, if you guys do play the game and you find anything like that, join our Discord. Discord.io/Cards and Tankards, and you guys can go in there and post any of your feedback on the cards of anything you think needs balancing, and we'll look into it.
What kind of sucks is if you kind of figure something out and you go to share it, it's going to disappear in the future. You're shooting yourself in the foot.
I got to be honorable here, but this is my OP, so I'm having a little too much success with
Take it away from me. It's cool.
I understand. It's for the better of everyone.
So, I mean, if you're playing it to success, though, your opponents are probably going to be the ones to report it. Let's be real.
Yeah, true that.
I'm tired of losing to this deck.
That's a good point. And if it's really good,
every time.
You're taking that all over the public taverns, just like, who wants to, waving the deck in the air, who wants to go?
No, taverns.
Oh, I can't remember what it was now, but one of our like first major tournaments we had, players either kind of work by themselves, or they'll work even in groups to play test decks for the tournaments. They'll play against each other, and they'll like play against other decks that they know are in the meta and competing well, to see how their deck performs against those. But there was a player who was like kind of isolated and by themselves, and they had something like that. Like, it was a really good combo nobody was using, nobody really thought about. They kept it to themselves, went into the tournament, and then just showed it off during the tournament. And it was just like, it was really good. And I was like, that is awesome. I love to see it. And
that's
the fact that they kept it secret for so long. And it wasn't even that it was broken and didn't need us to address it for balancing. It was just like a unique way of combining card abilities that nobody had thought of before. And it caught everyone off guard. It was amazing to see.
Yeah, that's why we do our practice rounds against each other in our private tavern. That's like our martial arts dojo. We're doing all of our training private, shut.
I hate when, especially when we had first started, and I'd play a stranger and I'd play a card, and they just like, you'd see the head shake. Yep. Like, yeah, I wouldn't have done that.
Yeah, but that's not. But sometimes they wouldn't do it, but it does work for you. But that if you don't have
sometimes
the confidence,
ignorance works. Yes. Yeah. I've had some blind luck occasionally, because I know for a fact I've played cards, and the second I did, I was like, why did I do that? But then come to find out, it actually.
I even had a guy be like, "Oh, you're selecting Plundering Guild.
Yeah.
You're screwed." And then I whooped him.
He was
twice.
high level too. I
whooped him twice, and he was so annoyed.
It was a
like,
nice
spammer. You're just spamming a bunch of. But that's the way it goes. When you talk crap and lose, nobody's happy. I think you had mentioned that you might have a couple more spoilers that you guys haven't announced yet on your Discord. Do you want to get into those now that we touched up on what's come so far?
I guess I can. I was trying to build up that tension, but let's get into it. So we do have 2 other creatures for you guys today. I'll leave the better one, in my opinion, for last, but we are going to introduce this guy. So this, for the first time ever, to anyone in the community, hope you guys are listening and tuning in and got this far through the podcast or the video. This is Spellbreaker. It is a 5-mana, 5/4 creature with an entrance ability that your opponent's spells cost 5 more mana until the end of their next turn. So when you play this, your opponent, if they have a card that is 5 mana already, it's going to become 10. If it's 6, if they're not running like MRA for reserve extra mana, then they can't play it at all on their next turn, right? So this is a counter to things like, your final spell plays that your opponent might do, stuff like that. The really powerful combos, the Ritual of Annihilation plays, the Great Revitalization combo, right? Deal a bunch of direct damage and heal a bunch. Like, this is the stopper for it. You play 3 of these in a row, you may just delay your own death.
That's I just wrote deal killer on that.
Yeah, that's
one.
a balancing.
That's a deal killer. Yeah.
That's a
well,
it is a great card. It only lasts for the 1 turn, so your opponent can get out of it. But it is definitely a very powerful card that's going to affect those very late game powerful spell decks by delaying them just a little bit for you to try to get that win condition off. Yeah, we'll see if it fits in your deck.
I don't think I'm the only one that this has ever happened to, but there's been times where I'm losing, and I just say to myself, 1 or 2 more turns.
Oh yeah,
and
if I could just survive. That's happened with me and you a lot.
So many
times. I just need to make it 1 more. If I can make it 1 more round, I'm good.
Yeah, then I can make my comeback. And sometimes, somebody will
Doesn't
play
help
with
me to
you.
say that out loud.
Yeah.
But yes.
Sometimes people will play with you, and they'll give you that extra turn to survive, and then you come back and win. So I mean, this is the card that like you said, the effect only lasts 1 turn. It's not going to
change.
Might be
all you need.
It's enough to keep you alive if you mentioned the new faction's going to be a bunch of spells, so you need to balance that a little bit. This is going to be an important card to have in your deck.
Spellbreakers.
And there's more cards that we're not going to spoil today that are going to help you with exactly what you're describing, just trying to get that extra turn in to get to that point, right? The whole point of Augur Order is to control, delay, and get to that victory that they foresaw. And so it'll be interesting to see what you guys do. But the downside is if you go and add all of those to your deck, you're diluting the other effectiveness of your deck, right? Like, you have to make room for this card. And if you're running a 3 of this, like, that means that whatever other 3 cards were making your deck lethal initially, it's going to be just slightly less lethal to have this card. So it's going to be interesting to see if you're going to want to run it as a 3. If it might not be.
If I could have multiples, yeah. If I had minimally 2, I would feel good with that card.
Yeah. 1's a little risky because you don't know if you're going to draw it. 3, I usually feel confident I'm going to come across a card once.
At least 1, yeah.
But we referenced it before, and it's true. Yeah, you can't just load in cards. You have a set amount of cards. You can only have a certain number be of your secondary faction be the number of cards in your deck. So it's not just add 1 card. It's you add 1 card, you might need to change 6 to 10 of them. Easy.
It will be interesting to see. And even if the ability, right, it happens and they didn't have a spell to play, it's still a 5-mana 5/4 on the board. That's nothing to scoff at. There are a lot of spells that remove 3 or less. There's going to be a couple others that might deal removal to anything higher than that in this faction and whatnot. But for the most part, it's a pretty strong creature that'll be sitting on your board, right? So you can still use it in that way effectively as well. Or maybe that's something that you're going to use with your mechanic. You want high hitters. 5 is a good mana or a good attack power for you. So, it may fit perfectly into your deck. Your deck, though, Damien, is with a lot of low guys in it. This might not be that deck for you. This might not be the card for you. So we'll see.
Yeah, no, this sounds like the deck for for him to stay alive against me, because again, there's been my method to madness is I beat you early because it's so many low level cards. If somebody can stay alive, I'm probably gonna run out of cards because I'm playing so many of them, and so this, I know he's like a little kid on Christmas over here, like I'm
gonna be all over this.
Yeah,
as soon as it drops, I have to.
The second spoiler and final one for you guys, I'm really excited about this card because it is going to change everything. It is the Suppressor of Magic. It is an 8-mana, 8/8 rare creature with an entrance ability, suppress an enemy creature. Suppress is a new ability getting introduced to the game that if your creature becomes suppressed, it loses all of its abilities that it has and it cannot gain new ones. So cards that add like new text lines to it, like give a creature a last word ability, or if a creature already has a last word ability, suppress will remove those abilities. It does not affect their stats, so their attack and health will remain the same, but like mastery, gone. Their entrance abilities probably already triggered, so mostly like last word or like activate abilities, get rid of them. They're gone. It's been suppressed. And it's a ability that we'll see more as the game grows. This is the only suppress ability that's going to be in this faction release. And we're going to add it to the game in moderation. We don't want everyone's creatures always suppressed all the time, right? But it is going to be very interesting to see how many players use this to shut down some of those powerhouse creatures, right? Like someone's using the Vicarious Arcane Eater and they're casting spells left and right, and they've got that thing up to 25 attack, 25 health. Or whatever. Maybe they actually at that point it wouldn't affect the attack and health, but if it's like early game or whatever, they play it and they're trying to get to that point of being a 25 attack, 25 health creature, you can just suppress it really early on and their spells are no longer buffeted up from that point forward. Really cool, interesting things.
That's for the whole duration of that, the whole round, the whole game.
Well, it does. So if you bounce the creature or if it goes to the graveyard, the suppress effect is gone.
Okay.
So they can like necromancy it back, or they can if someone like if they want to spring trap it right back to their own hand, or if you spring trap it for whatever reason. I wouldn't spring trap a creature you suppressed, but if they do, right, then when it comes back, it'll be back to its normal status. But it's the same thing with like if you give temporary abilities like that to certain cards, like pickpocket, right, gives it that like death blower last word ability to it. So like if that card gets killed or spring trapped, it also loses that ability. So it's the same kind of expectation that you can have for suppress. But it will be very interesting to see you shutting down some creatures, right? Like you got I'm trying to think, like King Alteron, right? You can suppress him and he can no longer activate duel. Or if you've got I'm trying to think, like Frenzy Flesh Sewer sacrificing through the activate ability, you can stop that in its tracks. There's a lot of things you can shut down now with this kind of a creature.
Yeah, all the cards that have like the death effects, boom. There's some ones that have good ones. You know, that just
well, now knowing these cards exist, now you have to be concerned when you're playing someone, not only of the cards you're playing but when exactly, you know.
Yeah,
I might go a little half-assed sometime with playing cards. Obviously, I've heard comments. Didn't need to play that one yet, but so I mean, the level of strategy just kind of went up a big notch.
Oh yeah.
Especially for the diehards, it's going to be neat.
Well, you just can't be relying on one card.
No, there's deal killers all over the place, or level setters, I'll say.
Well-rounded decks are going to be essential. Sorry to cut you off there. I was going to say, being reliant on one strategy, I think, is going to get you killed after this update. I think you're going to really need balanced play styles.
Well, it'll be interesting, right? Because some players may still obviously stay in the current faction setups they have. So they may not use in their deck any of these cards, and thus they're not going to have those shutdowns, because this is not a aggro faction, right? So if I'm an aggro deck, I'm not going to be using Augur Order cards, most likely. There may be a few that you want to scatter in, but you'll probably have more success, focusing elsewhere. And so that's where it'll be interesting to see, like, there are a lot of like counters and shutdowns that'll exist in this deck. But even if I counter and shut down everything that you have, I still need a win condition of my own. So it'll be interesting to see what people are going to be, mixing with this faction to try to still end up with that win. A comment that we had from a lot of beta testers was they felt like initially this was only going to be a secondary faction. Like people would only, spice up their deck a little bit with cards from here to counter their opponent, and that would be it. But now as they're seeing more cards get added, more contracts, more, very powerful cards, they're like, oh, I don't know. I can't go without all of these now. But if they run all of those, it's like, what's your win condition? So you still got to figure it out. And it'll be so interesting to see. I'm so excited. You have no idea.
The difference of being able to hide the contract ability until it's played is enough incentive to make it primary, in my opinion.
Well, now every time you play on the receiving end of something, every time you play something, your brain's always going to wonder.
And if you're playing somebody who's the Augur Order, they play a contract and you don't know what it is.
You know it's coming.
Your mind's running through that could be anything.
Yep.
So
like if you don't know that it's the breach of terms, right? And you're like trying to right, let me pull it back up so we can have the visual.
Yeah, you could get really overcomplicated to yourself with like overstress it. Yeah, be like, oh my god, what is that contract? Now I don't want to play this, even though it might not even be the contract that you're worried it is.
Yep.
Just the illusion of it's Schrodinger's contract. You know, you're like, it could be anything.
Exactly, and that's where you're gonna see just how powerful that is. Just the fact that you have the knowledge and your opponent doesn't is going to give you that slight edge of advantage, because they're going to try to play around something that may not even be there. But if they are smart, you know, they're going to always play the match assuming that that's the card, and so they're not going to throw their win condition into, you know, a counter spell type card, the breach of terms, right, negating that spell. So they'll try to get something else out there first just to test the water, and if it doesn't activate, then they play the big powerful spell. But they had to do, you know, a little bit more to get that to work now, because they have to waste the mana and the spell just trying to test the waters to see if the trap's actually there or not. So it will be very interesting. But like I said, with Augur Order as your primary faction, it is a lot of countering your opponent. There are very few cards that are just going to be like dominate your opponent in a victory kind of sense, right? Without like spoiling a lot of the other cards. A lot of the cards in this faction are going to be very low attack and higher health. They're more defensive, right? And they're more delay. They will work very well with the loophole mechanic. And there's one card that can make them really, really viable. And I want to talk about it, but I can't. And so like, we'll see how that goes. And if people are able to make Augur Order viable enough as a primary faction to not only be, you know, disruptive of your opponent's strategy, but still just very viable with its own very powerful win conditions. We have a couple set up, but we've set them to be, you know, weaker on purpose to make it balanced, right? Because like stopping your opponent is already extremely powerful. Also having that win condition just easily thrown in with it would make it just like you can't play anything else at that point. You have to run Augur Order, right? So we'll see. I think a lot of the people who run Augur Order as their primary are going to be more into the control decks with a few cards leading to a very powerful end game. If you're going to add Augur Order otherwise, it's probably going to be as a secondary faction to just kind of counter little bits of things here and there. But then you're going to run with the kind of win conditions you're already experiencing in the game today. But we'll see. Players are going to surprise me. I know it.
Oh man,
I'm making a new deck. I mean,
yeah.
I'm actually going to try it as my primary, and then see what I can do for a end game secondary, I'll call it.
Yeah, see if the hiding the contracts is enough incentive to keep it.
Well, I'm intrigued. I mean, I haven't even gotten it in my hands to like throw down these cards yet, but I've already come kind of in my head. I'm wondering about some stuff.
There's still more cards to come that, you know, he hasn't talked about today. You know, I get it. There's a lot, 35 cards. You can have a lot of fun announcing those. It's, you know, there's going to be a lot of trial and error with this one. So I guess my $1 million question to you is, you know, being the game designer, you know, you've been involved with the whole update process. What's your current, you know, main deck rollout?
I'm currently, just like everyone else will probably be after the update, focusing most of my attention on just trying to experience the new cards. But when other players start building their decks right outside of what comes up through my theory crafting and what I'm running, you know, I'll probably end up settling across, like, I usually will have decks that are all different archetypes, and then I will play them kind of based on the personality of the person that approaches me. Because usually if somebody comes up to me and they're very like aggressive about wanting to play me, I can expect that they're trying to play like some very aggro type deck. Like they're just like, I'm going to just stomp my opponent type deal, or they're going to be heavy removal. So maybe I'll run a deck that's counter to that because I have the perception, or I'm perceptive and I can see the future. I don't know. But yeah, so actual like in public taverns, obviously not running anything Augur Order. And I've got a little bit of everything right now in the beta, though. It's all Augur Order, nothing but. We're just trying to play through that as much as we can, and how I'm combining that stuff I'll keep a secret, because it's heavily tied to a lot of the cards we haven't spoiled yet. We've only got 9 of the cards, I believe, so far, right, spoiled for you guys, or 10, and you know, we've got 35 total, so there's a whole lot of stuff that everybody still hasn't seen that they can look forward to on the update releasing, and it's going to change all of your thought process. Even if right now with what you've seen you're like, oh, I've got all these ideas in mind, I'm going to build this deck, you may find that there's like more cards that are going to get added that absolutely support that deck, and it's going to make it even more vital, or like viable, right? Or you're going to find that there's other cards that you're like, oh wait, never mind, screw that deck. This is the actual deck I'm going to build, and we'll see what you guys do with it. Speaking of which, I know we've had a lot of players in our community talk about acquisition rates, right, of cards. Previously, we've only had the core booster pack where when you open it, right, it has cards from all the factions. Our way of getting cards directly from specific factions was the Barkeeper's Daily Cards, which you guys can find in the public taverns, which cycles every day, every 24 hours. With this new faction and moving forward, we've decided to add faction booster packs to the game that'll be coming out with this update. They will be 200 gold and 50 gems. So it is going to require you to have gems to get, but you can get, what was it, 250 gems from the free track of the progression reward system here behind me if you're leveling up through the season, right? So you can buy at least 5 faction specific packs from those gems, or if you decide to support us and buy gems as well, you can do that. And it'll be 50 gems per pack. And then you can have only cards from the faction you're looking for in each of the packs. And so if you're going to try to acquire all of the Augur Order on day one, you can open just Augur Order packs with the gold that you guys have in reserve, and you'll be able to try to get those cards a little bit quicker. Otherwise, you can still get random cards from your daily win. You'll get more cards from the Barkeeper's Daily Cards, 2 a day. So if you want to acquire, and it's the hat trick style, so it won't repeat a card until it's gone through all of the cards, right? And so 2 a day for 35 total cards. You're going to look at only a couple of weeks to get one of everything on top of whatever you're opening from your packs normally. It's still a very fast acquisition rate. But for those who are interested in like day one, week one acquisition of Augur Order, maybe the faction pack will be for you. And we've added it to try to help you out.
Oh, I have to. I mean, I love the mix up. I won't lie, because sometimes you'll draw something and it'll look so damn good you want to try it, but might not be your normal faction you use.
No, and I mean, we've talked about this on our review.
Can I prepay? Is there any way to just like preload some shit?
We say, yeah, just make sure you have enough gold or gems in your I'll
be all over
page.
this.
I mean, the game's so generous with getting cards that even if you don't want to do the buy method,
you don't have to.
You don't have to, but I mean, this is a free game. I think one of the easiest purchases I ever did in sales was buying that season pass.
Season pass,
$9.99. It was like, all right. I don't mind it for, I love the idea of supporting developers. So I see a game that's free. I'm like, well, how are they making their money? You guys have a lot of cool cosmetics, I mean, like for anybody watching on YouTube, you have your outfit, you have the dragon, the first thing. Stratus over here said, he's like, I want a pet, it's like, I was like, oh, go buy one.
I have a dragon.
So, I mean, you guys do great with the cosmetics, but you have a season pass feature, which, gives you access to private taverns, some extra unlocks as you level up. It's like, that was a no-brainer for me to buy. So I love that there's the option to support the devs too, or earn it the old-fashioned hard way.
Yeah, and you bought the season pass, right, for the 1,000 gems. If on the free tier you get the 250 back, and once you bought the season pass, if you've leveled up to 100, you'll get an extra 500 back there. So you have 750 gems to get back from the 1,000 spent. I'm not sure where you're at in your leveling, but you may have the gems right there to spend on the Augur Order packs if you've got the gold as well.
I'll be honest with you, I'm not level 100. I'll need to double check I love seeing the incentive of the unlocks as they come. Like, all right.
It was cool. One time we were in a public tavern and it was a new player, and this was kind of really cool. And it was a guy he was all decked out. He had all sorts of bells and whistles and toys, and he's throwing them all around for people to play with. And
he's like, you want some dice?
And the person was feeling like, I can't afford all that. I'll never be able to get all that cool stuff. And the guy instantly was like, most of this shit you get just from the progression. Just keep playing, and you don't. He's like, I didn't really spend a lot of money on all this, so it was cool to see the encouragement. I think he might have even said
he didn't spend any money.
Yeah, you remember what I was talking about?
I remember the exact incident.
That made me feel good because I knew the person hearing it wasn't feeling like, oh, I can never have any of these cool things. It's like, no, you absolutely can. Just play and have fun.
Yeah, you'll get them organically. And
we've even got like community events, right, that have gem prizes. So you can compete in like tournaments, art contests, stuff like that have those gem prizes. Mateo just did a sponsored video with us, and we gave him a bunch of gems to give out to his community. So if you're a fan of Mateo 311's VR content, you can check him out and that video that he did on us to maybe join his community and see if you can get your hand on some of those gems as well. We have players in the community that are hosting their own tournaments and giving out gems. We've got other content creators that are just doing, being good guy content creator and going around to the tavern and introducing themselves and just handing out gems to other people as well. Like there are tons of ways to get gems as well, even if you want to remain free to play. And we have, no hesitations or resistance against you guys doing that. We've added gem gifting as a feature to encourage you guys to be, friendly and help in that kind of way as well. So definitely don't feel like you're missing out on anything if you don't feel like you're going to buy gems. There are plenty of ways to acquire them through either friendly people or, like I said, events, and even more of those will keep coming in the future as we like turn tournaments into actual game features rather than like something that we just kind of host with the game. It'll be something within the game in the future. And so that'll be much more regular, much more accessible, much more automated. So it'll be more frequent as well for you guys to try to acquire those gems by winning. So yeah, don't even worry about that. Just download the game, free to play, and like you've already mentioned, all the ways that you're acquiring the cards through like completing the quests over here, right? You got tons of way to get that extra gold to buy those packs after packs after packs, and you're going to end up getting all the cards pretty quickly, anyways.
Yeah, more than generous for. I almost wish you guys just charged $10 for the game. I won't lie. I think I even said that in the podcast. Like
I like the idea of not having a financial obstacle for somebody to enjoy it. But if there's anybody who, sometimes I see free games and I won't grab them right away because they're free, and I go a little bit surprisingly more hesitant with something that's free than $5, as weird as that sounds. So if there's anybody who hasn't grabbed Cards and Tankards
it's worth
for
it.
free, just grab it. Great community. I mean, you mentioned Mateo311. We actually did a podcast interview with him on our show. Great friend of the podcast. He's a great guy. And it's like the community that you guys have put together is great. I'm
pretty self-governing too for the most part.
Yeah, everybody's helpful. I haven't seen any toxicity in the lobbies.
Nope.
I mean,
any issues that might have been issues months and months ago or dead issues.
So in-house tournaments built into the game might be a literal game changer. That is so exciting to me. I could totally see us being like, dude, we got to do this tournament. Like, I think our deck's good. But, even with that not in the game now, you mentioned you put them together through your Discord. So do you want to plug your Discord again? I know you mentioned how to find it earlier, but in case it slipped by the listener, maybe they were doing some dishes or cooking and they didn't hear how to find the Discord. Do you want to plug your Discords and social media again? And then I can't stress enough, you guys have a great community. You guys hold community events. Everybody's helpful. You can find matches there. It's a great time. So how can somebody find that?
You can actually just go right here. Discord.io/Cards and Tankards.
Look at that.
Join our Discord today. I know a lot of people use the .gg links, but if we lose our boosting, then we lose the link. So .io is permanent. It'll always be up for you to join and access. So we decided to go that route since it's a little more permanent, right? And we don't have to require you guys boosting us to keep giving you the different features we want to give you.
I think you'd rather people probably buy cosmetic items than give Discord money as well anyway. But, that's a different conversation.
True. And yeah, like you mentioned, the reason we want to keep the game free to play rather than charging, despite players maybe having hesitations of what they think a free to play game is going to look like, we want as many people in the taverns as possible. It's a social game, right? We want you guys to always come to the taverns and find other players. And we started off as a very small community, and we're constantly growing, right? And we have over 100 players active at any given time now. So there's no challenge for you to find a match if you're looking for a match. And as we continue to grow with the accessibility of it being a free to play game, right, we're not going to have that be our own brick wall that's going to stop us from keeping this game from being successful. Of course, we need the gem support from you guys in order to keep the servers going and keep the development flowing. But we try to add as many things to the game that are viable that you would actually want anyways, for as cheap as we can make them reasonably for what it costs to develop them, right? Pets are one of the more expensive ones because of the acquisition of the models and the designs of the animations and stuff, right? But that's where when we were looking at like these faction packs, we wanted to make them as cheap as we possibly could, right? Because it's not something really like the development for it didn't take too long for us to figure out. We just need to make sure that it's something that does help us with revenue wise without charging you guys so many coins that you feel like it's unobtainable, right? 200 gold is what you currently have to get for the pack, and that's like 4 matches. So like 4 matches and you've still got that faction specific pack if you want for just a small amount of gems to focus it into a faction.
No, this is a game that I wholeheartedly expect to see continue to grow. I think it's I didn't come from a card playing background before this, so it was learnable, fun as hell. Little changes make you all excited again. The social aspect in the tavern with just, buying your buddy a drink, or we'll say a soda, whatever.
Yeah, whatever we talked about that last time, whatever your brain fills it in as.
Yeah, whatever it is, the pet, there's just something for everyone. I just think it's a matter of people trying it and then going, you know what, this is a legit experience. I like this a lot. So I'm hoping it continues to.
Yeah, for me, it's one of those, I don't know how it's, there's so many App Lab games that we go, how is this not in the official store? But this one really sticks out to me.
It deserves it. It's its own niche for sure.
And we've seen the success stories. I mean, I understand not every game needs to go to the official store, and hey, some might actually be better off on App Lab. That's something we talked about with Chris Prout. But like, this is a game that I think, simply as you said, it
has
benefits,
the boxes checked.
Yeah, and it benefits from the social aspect. So the more people hopping into it, the better. On the official store, it only benefit everybody. I mean, there's been some games, like I said, Gym Class VR. They just announced they're going over to the official store. That's huge. I think that this is definitely a no-brainer for it too. But even if not,
I think it'd still do well.
Yeah, you guys are building such a great community. You're growing. You're constantly adding.
I'm going to say real quick, the passion. This isn't even funny because every developer we talk to, you guys all have next level passion. But if the teams that's working on this has half the passion that you do, I can't. I mean, the enthusiasm for real, the enthusiasm, and I'm listening to it in real time, and I'm like, I'm all excited.
Yeah, you want to play?
Come on, man. So it's like that level of passion that's being brought forth is just, it's awesome. So for anybody who's worked on Cards and Tankers, they deserve to feel pretty freaking good because it does come out in the actual product.
We hope so, yeah. And I get, players from the community reaching out to us in our DMs or in the Discord, or they'll come up to me in person when they see me in game. Especially in game, right? Like they're like, oh my gosh, I actually get to meet a developer. Like, this is amazing. I never get to meet the developers of the games I play. I'm like, yeah, I'm just as passionate about playing the game as I am about making it. And so, and I'll give them my time and play with them in a match, and that makes their day. And they always are very grateful for the game itself and the experience that it gives, but as well as like our interactions with them and being, open and engaging. I'm always in the Discord, responding to messages whenever players are talking about specific things that pique my interest. I'll hop into those conversations and chat with them. Right, I'm not just a name floating up in the corner and that's it. I'm accessible, and so are all the rest of the developers. Right, we're very friendly and helpful, even though we're crazy busy. Right, I work my full-time job and I do this on the side pretty much full-time as well. But it's such a passion project, as you mentioned, that it's 100% sustainable for me, regardless of the time commitment I have to give to it.
Yeah, imagine, I want to see everybody on this full time. Yeah. Screw the other full time.
Eventually, that would be nice.
Yep. Something I say all the time, that it's such a magical time to be interviewing developers on the podcast because there's so much passion. Nobody's in it for the money. They're doing it because they love it. Even all sides of this, the people who are full-time in VR, either in development, marketing, content creation, whatever it is, hats off to you. But unfortunately, most of us are doing exactly what you said, the 40-hour week, work week, and then go home. And I doubt you're putting in only 40 hours a week into Cards and Tankers. I'd be shocked. So, the passion, the level of dedication, it's there, and that shows, in the finished product. And also, when you, exactly what Stratus said, when you hear you talk about it, you're excited. You want to see players do it. You want to see them find the exploits.
It resonates. Yeah. The excitement resonates.
Yeah. You're not making this. I'm sorry. I was going to say, you're not making it for money. You're making it because you love card games and you want it to be as the best it can be. So hats off to you.
Yeah. I find a lot of the times that, especially among the development team, right, if we have disagreements about a way forward, it's always the passion about like what the game should be for the player experience. Because like for me, I came into the game as a player. So I'm always looking at the game through that lens, which I think really helps me with the game design aspect of building Cards and Tankards up. So whenever we talk about, adding anything to the game for either a financial cost, or if we're just going to invest money into development of something, like whether a player is going to even want it, I'm very passionate about making sure that it aligns with what I think and or know from talking to the community is something that they actually want or need, to make sure that we're not wasting our time, to make sure that we're delivering the absolute best possible product, because I want to continue to enjoy, playing Cards and Tankers. I don't want to build a game that I'm not going to want to continue to play myself, right? Like, even no paycheck could make me basically throw that away. So yeah, it's 100% passion, like driving the product. And it's something that I can see resonating within all the players that reach out to me and are so happy to have experienced the game. You've mentioned that you don't, run into a lot of toxic people and stuff. They do exist, right? Anyone's welcome into the game as a free to play. But we have the moderation team, volunteers, also just as passionate, helping us resolve any of those issues. You just report them, and a moderator can come in, resolve the situation if there is one. And it's always on a slow escalation, right? Like, we're not just trying to ban everybody left and right, but definitely if players are those kinds of toxic people, they're very easy to identify, and they're not welcome here, because we want to make sure this community stays a welcoming, safe place for everyone to come chill after their long day of work, just escape from reality, put on that virtual reality headset, listen to that tavern music, sit in the ambiance of this low glow light, right, and just relax and or sweat and playing your battle against your opponent, because you're strategizing. That's what drives you. Whatever it is, it's a safe place for you to be you and to kind of just escape and relax.
No, and I love the like real-time moderation if there's a problem. That's that I can't.
Very few games have that.
And I've racked my brain since the last time we had spoken, and I'm like, I don't have any examples of a game setup where you can go,
especially an indie dev game like this. That's
I'm even talking AAA. It doesn't matter. Everything's after the fact, or even with most hacking programs, you have to do most of the legwork to prove the shit, let alone get them to listen.
This guy will pop in and go, "No, you're right. This guy's being."
Let's go have a talk in a corner.
Yeah, come on, man, cut it out. What are you doing?
No, but it's cool because it just, to me, that's part of that self-governing attitude that I've seen in the game, where people know who've been playing it what exists, and things will get taken care. And we've seen it even when people are having fun. There's still a level of respect that. So I'm sure it exists, but not to any level or degree that I've seen.
It's controlled well.
Yeah.
It's handled well.
Yeah. I don't think anybody's trying to go over the line,
I think that culture, right? We've nurtured that culture over, a year and a half, 2 years now of early development. And because of that, just like you mentioned, all those players that have been around for a long time, they continue to, without being the moderators enforcing our rules for us, they embody like that rules and that culture, right? And that spreads. If you go into VR chat and everyone's being toxic, you're more likely to be toxic yourself, right? But if you join a community of people who are super friendly, helpful, call you out when you maybe cross a line on something, you're like, oh, sorry, I didn't mean to cross that line, and then you correct yourself, right? And then everything's great and everyone's vibing and everyone's having a great time, and then you come back because you now know that that's the kind of environment that you can expect coming back to. Versus like feeling like it's a toxic environment. You're like, I just don't feel like being toxic today. I don't have the energy for that. So you just, skip out on VR chat or whatever. Like, love VR chat for everything that they've done for VR. But man, every time I go in there, I just find nothing but, toxic people doing crazy stuff.
Yeah.
No,
we're all set with the VR chat. We just reviewed We Met in VR.
Yeah,
I won't say it was my best film experience.
And what we were joking, your film work in your YouTube video,
it's
right
10 times better than the film
come on,
work.
Man, no shake at all. This is awesome. So, we've kept you for quite a bit. I always feel bad. You referenced it. You work a full-time job. You put a lot of hours in Cards and Tankards. Granted, it's a passion, but definitely most developers are burning out on both ends. So, we definitely appreciate you taking your time and spending well over an hour with us today. Is there anything that we didn't go over, in terms of maybe plugging communities, anything new, or do you think that we crossed all the T's and dotted the I's?
Well, for those that are watching the video, you guys can see in the lower right-hand corner here, we've got the new logo, and I'll actually put up our new cover art. You can expect to see some new cover art for the game here coming real soon.
I like that.
Cards and Tankards getting the rebrand, right? We want to clean it up a bit, make it a little more professional and polished, and hopefully as we push to try to get noticed and make it to that official Quest store, we just continue to show that we're of the caliber that they're looking for, right? And so I think this will help out a lot. We did a retro brand of like our old logo for a limited time release merch store. And now we'll be replacing and creating a bunch of new merch with all of our new logos and some of the concepts that we've come up with around like creatures and whatnot. If you're a fan of the Lonely Ooze or any of the oozes, we've got like a whole line of, ooze merch that's going to look like mochi, if you're familiar with the Japanese dessert, the little mochi balls that are like little
frozen ice
balls
cream
and stuff. Yeah, and so we've got like the lonely mochi and whatnot going on, and it'll be a cute little mochi merch I think a lot of people will like. And we've got some other stuff in the work as well, so expect to see us grow our merch stuff with the new brand and everything here soon, and the store refresh to look nice and polished here real soon as well.
Oh yeah, I got it.
Merch is good,
and like that new logo is awesome, especially for like a store page. I think that really captured what the game's about. It shows, obviously the font and everything is cool, but you see the players having fun. You see the cards. It makes you want to hop in and join.
Everyone's smiling.
Yeah, you want to go get involved in it. So I think that's a great new picture.
I just love that it's continuing to evolve. It's yet to plateau.
The games, even since the time that it's not like we started playing it right at release. We hopped
held
in
off a little.
pretty well into the development of it.
Yep.
And even since then, it's improved significantly. Constant changes. It's like, wow, these guys, they hustle.
Yeah, we've got a ton of things on the list that we still want to add to the game as we continue to grow, right? We've got expansions once we exit early access. Last quarter of this year is the plan to exit early access. Once we do that, we're going to start a regular cycle of 4-month expansions where you're going to see new cards for each of the factions from there, right? As well as we're going to continue to add little features here and there, polish different things if they need to, or not necessarily polish, but like, add different things or expound upon different things. We've added the social system recently, right? We're going to make that have a couple extra features in the future with maybe some kind of way for you to chat to help with, accessibility. So players who maybe can't speak, mute players will be able to at least communicate through like a messaging system in game. It's not in the game yet because we're still working on like making sure it has different filters and stuff to prevent people from spamming you with things you don't want to, get received type deal. So we're not sure if it's going to be like quick action or like, limited options, or if it's just going to be a full text type thing. We're still trying to figure that out, and a bunch of other stuff. Like I said, the in-game tournaments is something that we've heard a lot of players from the community want. They want some form of ranking and like skill-based system of not necessarily matchmaking, but like something that can show off your actual skill rather than like right now, next to players' names, it shows their level from the season pass. And that's really just like an indicator of time, how much time you've put into the game, right, to level up. So people want to see some form of skill, and that'll probably be heavily incorporated with whatever tournament update we do, where players can, register and play through the game itself rather than Discord. And there's so much features that come along with that. Like right now we have no way of controlling like the deck lists people are using in tournaments, but once it's in game, if you register with a deck box, then right, like that's the deck that's locked in for the tournament. So there's no cheating or deck swapping or anything. There's a ton of things that come with that, and that's all down the road in the future that we're gonna continue to grow the game and add it. And we have players submitting suggestions all the time: 2v2 modes, campaign modes, more NPCs to play against for specific unique boss battle challenges, for unique rewards. Like all of those things we love as great ideas, and we plan to hopefully add to the game in the future. It just depends on how quickly we can grow the community and the team, right, with financing and everything else, because the smaller we are, the slower that's going to happen, but we're still going to make it happen.
Well, and that's definitely where people, when they play it, can easily support.
Yeah, easy. And hopefully, when this is out of early access, that comes with a move to the official store too. I think I read somewhere one time that like they don't put early access games on the official store. So maybe I'll justify to myself that's why, you guys are still on App Lab, and
it's the most polished early access you're ever going to get your hands on.
Right. I would never have. It doesn't feel early access as the consumer, so I can't wait to see when it's, officially out. So that's discord.io/Cards and Tankards. We'll throw that link in the show notes, but, definitely go join their Discord community if you've been curious. Go get the game. It's free.
You have nothing to lose. I'll tell you what you got to lose. You're gonna lose a lot of time when you go, wow, this is a lot of fun.
Yeah. Oh my God, I've entered the rabbit hole.
I can make my own decks. That's I can have more than one deck.
There's strategy. There's endless strategy.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
It's a whole. It's its own. It's becoming its own entity, I think.
So, and you'll never know. Maybe you'll run into me right in one of the taverns, and we'll do a bounty match, and you may win some free gems.
Ooh, hopefully I can come at you with a nice Plundering Guild Augur Order balance that you were not expecting,
it's got to feel good. Like, you've only played the game maybe not even once, and who do you run into the first time you go into a tavern? But the guy who made the game.
And he's going to help you a lot, happened.
Yeah, that's just, I'm just thinking from a consumer, like, it's got to be almost, I mean, obviously you get the advantage just from being the person who made it and played it more, but then now this person's probably not thinking as clear because they're like, I'm playing the guy who made the fucking game.
It's funny because sometimes, I don't want the added attention when I hop into the games because like I'm drained from a day of working and developing, and I just kind of want to come in, like I said, and just relax like a normal player. And so I have like alt accounts I also hop on. But those players that have been around a very long time know my voice, right? So if I hop on even on an alt and I change the name all the time, as soon as they hear my voice, they know it's me and they know that I'm just there undercover. And so they'll let me keep kind of being stealthy and whatnot. But like I'll play against other people and they won't always know that they're playing against a developer either. I'm on my alt account. But a lot of the times I will be on my main account. And if I am, I'm always, if you see me on my main account, I am there specifically because I'm willing to answer any and all questions, play matches with you guys. Usually I do the bounty matches just for fun, and I play my fun decks rather than going like super serious to give everyone a shot to win some free gems. And everyone loves that when they can beat a developer, right? It's like the huge ego boost for them. They love it. And I have a great time doing it because it's just fun to interact with them and play. But yeah, I've definitely seen like I'll be on my developer account and a level 1 will pop into the tavern for the very first time and just kind of be looking around like, oh, this is a cool place. And they look over and they see my name with developer written under it. And they're like, what the heck?
Is this an AI or is this real? Yeah.
Yeah. It's always interesting. I love it.
That's awesome. So go check out, Cards and Tankards on the App Lab store. I'll put the link to that in the show notes as well. Go check out their Discord and have a blast with this one.
Definitely got to have them on again. Yeah. There's always things changing and happening.
When you got, this next update, I think you said August 16th, right?
Yep, August 16th is where we're going to do the update. I'm not sure what time that's going to be for everybody, so I won't say that here because my time is different than what we've discussed in our channels for like the universal time, right?
Yeah, you'll get the Australian, it'll be a different day.
Yeah, if you join our Discord through the link we've dropped a bunch of times, right, like we'll have the announcement there with the countdown for everyone to get excited about it. And then, we could do either a follow-up or maybe when we end up exiting early access, right, talk about like all the things that we did to make that a reality and what the future is from that point on, right, and our plans. Definitely love having these interviews with you guys. You guys do a phenomenal job. I love watching your guys' interviews with other VR creators as well. So I'm definitely gonna obviously try to hopefully get everyone from our community to continue to watch because it's all just great content. We're looking forward to doing another interview with you guys in the future. One thing though, I will drop because people have said it confuses them. Not you guys, but for our update, Augur Order is AUGUR. It is not AUGER like the farming tool in Augur that like gets holes. It is AUGUR, and it is related to the concept of like historical religious figures that used to like determine the future based on things that they observed. So they'd see like birds flying a certain direction, and they would foresee that meant weather or good tidings or whatever, right? And so that kind of concept of foreshadowing or foreseeing the future outcomes aligns with again the perceptive God and his power of foresight.
Spell check and autocorrect do like us a lot of good who type a lot, but sometimes a downside. I wonder if it's like spell checks and stuff leading people to, because if you type it incorrect or maybe even UR, I don't know, it'll say ER is a correct spelling because that's a farm tool and everything like that. So I wonder how much of that is because of spell checks and stuff like that. But no, good correction there. So definitely check out this. Case. Definitely, yeah, right. Definitely check out this game. We'll definitely have to have you on, when early access leaves, maybe one time before then, depending on how
the lack of early access party.
Yeah. And then maybe we'll have to have you on one time before that, depending on, how our play sessions with this new faction goes. We might have some questions.
Might have some questions.
But other than that,
I'm interested to see what your guys' thoughts are for sure.
Yeah, no, other than that, keep up the great work with this. Hopefully one day we see it, you full time with it, because exactly what Stratus said, if this was it, you with the full-time job, not what's it going to be like when you are full-time. So I can't wait to see what the future has for Cards and Tankards, and hopefully we see you blow up one day on the official store. That'd be the best.
Fingers crossed. And cheers to you guys. Thanks again.
No, thank you.